For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by Zoom as posted on the town website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. As a preliminary matter, I am going to confirm that all members of the board are present and can hear me. I am Bob Springett, Chair of the committee. Mr. Jeffries.
John Jeffries, present.
Ms. Hunter.
Robin Hunter, present.
And I members, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Our town administrator, Mr. Dwelly.
Present.
Our assistant town administrator, Ms. O'Brien.
Present.
Our administrative assistant, Mona DeSulio.
Present.
I think that covers the I don't know. I'm going to also introduce Felicia Hoffman.
Town clerk is on the phone. Felicia? Yep.
Okay.
Present.
Thank you. Okay. That being done, we'll open the meeting with citizens' comments. Hearing none.
Wait a minute. I have to rename my name, right, Bob? I mean, wait a minute, Justine. I gotta go Justine.
All right, so
You have to be faster, Justin.
No, wait a minute. I can't cope with you guys. You're so good. You're so fast.
And John,
you're way too
fine.
happy. I don't know what's happened. You, I think.
Okay, I'm here. I'm here.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, you do know I greatly appreciate, especially you three selectmen, who, having been a president of a League of Women Voters for years in Dover, you do this without any economic benefit. So I'm not sure that anyone is listening to us on Zoom, but having said that, I think, I tremendously appreciate that. And I also tremendously appreciate your adhering to the open meeting laws, which basically says that we citizens don't necessarily have to talk, but you have to let us be in on your meeting. So I really appreciate that. Now, for the...
Just 1 minute. You mean I don't get paid?
Well, you get paid $150, I think.
right, I was going to say, for full disclosure, we get paid.
Give me a break. I mean, I actually love, I love you. Okay, so now I'm kicking into my either Bernie or Nancy Pelosi mode. And I'll just keep on saying this because given everything in DC, I think there has to be accountability. I'm speaking for myself, by the way, not for any committee I'm on. I think it's wrong. And I'll call myself Bernie Sanders. So you want to put me in that thing, fine.
Do you have those nice mittens?
Mittens.
Now, Robin, you're being very cheeky. All I can say, I think it's wrong that there are Massachusetts Department of Environmental Regulations that says that our major public water supplier, which is a commercial entity, as you all know, not a municipal entity, is not living within the scientifically determined water withdrawal amounts that they are supposed to live within. And why do I think this is important? I think it's important because, as you know, you guys know, we still don't have a definitive answer as to the the source of the E. coli outbreak this summer. Secondarily, we don't have definitive answers concerning wells that go dry. And in general, thirdly, I think there are rules. And I think, like Trump, I shouldn't say that, but whatever. There are rules that people need to adhere to. So if they have a permit from the state, which is based on science, they need to adhere to this. So having said that, my two comments to you guys, and thank you for putting up with me as usual, are one, have you all finished negotiating the contract with Colonial Water Company? And second, and you don't have to answer me, you can do what you want. And secondarily, have you been speaking with Denise Garlick and Mike Rush, our representatives and state senators, about having them put pressure on DEP to enforce the regulations that are in place for the Colonial Water Permit? Okay, those are my comments, and I will mute myself or go offline or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Justine. And your address?
Oh my God, 23 Haven Street, Dover, Mass. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move right on to 1.1, review of 2020 town meeting warrant articles.
Bob, if it would be possible, I had a community comment as well.
I'm sorry, Andrew, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just didn't want to interrupt, but if I may, I'll just make a brief comment.
Sure.
So I'm Andrew Beasley, and thank you all for the time this evening. And again, like Justine said, for the great
Your address, Andrew?
Pardon? Yeah. So I live at 15 Knollwood Drive, in Dover, and I'm attending this meeting more for your respective guidance. I recognize you probably can't address it in the meeting itself, but there's a stream that runs through the back of our neighborhood, and then through a culvert that enables the stream to run underneath the old train tracks. And that culvert abuts my property, and at this point it's essentially completely blocked. And with every passing storm, the stream water is backing up and flooding into the yard. I've reached out to the town more than 8 months ago, and while it's been helpful, we haven't been able to determine precisely who's accountable for unclogging the culvert. There was an initial sense that it might be the town, it might be Bay Colony, it might be the state of Mass. And, as you can imagine, I'm a lot less interested in kind of determining who should fix the problem, and more interested in just trying to come up with a solution, particularly before the spring, where I'm quite fearful that we'll have significant flooding damage since it's already flooding in the wintertime. So thank you for any guidance that you can be able to offer. Love to get some assessment of, ultimately who can help.
Okay, Andrew, Norm, I'm going to ask Mr. Dwelly if he would like to just provide whatever information he may have about this for you. I mean, normally it's a statement and we move on.
Yeah.
But you're a new guy, so we're going to try to. Chris, do you have any helpful information?
I do, yeah. So Bobby Tosi, the town's interim highway superintendent, and Mike Angieri, the town's engineer, have been out to the site at least 3 times over the past 8 months. I went down there the last time with them 2 weeks ago to take a look. So the culvert in question is underneath the old rail bed, and it is state property. Bobby, when I was out there, was talking about how, he could potentially get a town vendor or something like that, but that leads to a whole host of liability issues and really trespassing issues where we can't touch the culvert. So we reached out to the state. They have it on their list. Keolis is their contractor for maintenance for it. So they confirmed that they have it on their list to be cleared, but they could not provide us with an exact date as to when they would go out. So 2 things for you, Andrew, that I recommend. One is Our state delegation is really helpful in these matters. So Denise Garlick and Mike Rush, our state rep and our state respectively, really helpful in ushering these things along. So I'd suggest reaching out to them. I'm happy to provide you with their contact information offline if that's helpful. And we've also reached out to them to let them know that this has come up as an issue, and we're hopeful to get while we have a confirmation from the state that they have on the list, it'd be, I think, in everyone's best interest to have a sense of when we can expect it to be cleaned out. So that's kind of the status of ownership and the status of the question. And as I mentioned, happy to separately shoot you an email and connect on how we can rope in our legislative delegation who have been fantastic representatives for the community.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. Thanks. That'd be helpful.
Bob, may I just make a very brief comment?
Sure, but you're still sideways, so I don't know if I should accept this.
God. Wait a minute. How's that?
That's even worse. No, you're good.
Technology. So Andrew, John Jeffries, and again, thanks for bringing this up this evening. I have also been out to the site. Bobby Tosi, as Chris mentioned, brought it to our attention, and it's something that these types of things we take very seriously. I went from Knollwood across the tracks, if you go in by 46 Springdale and you just follow the walking tracks by 46 Springdale and you just go up to where the culvert comes out, you can see it's a very noticeable change in the water pattern. So exactly. If you get on your mountain bike or get on foot, however you do it, you'll see that from the entrance at 46 and you walk up the hill towards your house, you can absolutely see visually where the water should be coming out and the rate that it should be coming out. I say all this by means of one of the things I think what I would suggest that you do is bring it to Denise's attention, just as Chris mentioned, in light of not only its effect on you, the homeowner, and clearly how the water's backing up, but it's also changing the way the water should flow into Trout Brook.
Absolutely.
So quite literally, you've probably already seen what anybody can see if they ride their bike back there. So I would suggest, Andrew, that you just include that in your commentary, that quite literally it's changing the dynamic of the water flow into Trout Brook all the way from your backyard, quite literally, into the brook, both right behind Ed's house and right in front of 46, all the way to where the brook rolls into underneath Springdale. Yeah. So just beyond, just beyond the pond. So if you can go beyond Channing Pond.
Yeah, I've done the walk and inspected it. I completely agree. It's a bigger problem than my property. I'm being, self-centered, just given the flooding risk, and it's becoming increasingly clear that I think in the spring I'll have probably potentially even an insurance issue. But duly noted, I'll reach out to Denise and just make sure that she's aware of not only my challenge but the broader ecological kind of issue. So thank you.
Thanks, John. So Andrew, I'll add my 2 cents. I'm sorry we can't do more tonight, but I can vouch, like many people in Dover, that Denise is a very effective representative for her constituents. And my relationship with Denise goes back, 14, 15 years. And I will say unequivocally, she's never let me down. So it's a good person to go to. Her staff is really good. This has been a long time. It's getting long in the tooth. So I'm hoping we can get more effective action. I very much appreciate it if you would keep us abreast of what's going on. Yeah. So just send Chris a note every now and then. Let us know how you're making out. Okay. And we'll, if we need to do more, I'm sure we can find a way to try to do a little bit more.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome. Okay. Let me get back to the agenda. Item 1.1. Discussion of the town meeting warrant articles. Chris, you're up.
Thank you. So before you is the latest and what is the final warrant article roster for our annual town meeting in the spring. Since the board reviewed this 2 weeks ago, we've got a few new additions, a total of 4 new additions that I'll just quickly run through. The first is we heard from the region that they are anticipating a capital request this year. So that's the new addition that you see there in row 12. And then we also included, as the finance team was meeting collectively and running through our list of internal goals for the team, recognize the DOR recommendation that the town should readopt OPEB for the town's OPEB trust fund. This is more of a procedural article. It doesn't really change much. So you'll see those placeholders on there. They're numbers 22 through 24. So those are those are the new articles, and the full list that you see is the final list that we've got going into town meeting at this point. At a future meeting, I believe your next one, the board will start to actually go through and assign each of these articles as they do in each year. And that's all I have on this topic.
Okay, so the warrant period closed on Friday last. And
Correct.
This is what we have to work with going to our town meeting. John, anything?
I'm going to yield my time to Jim and to Dave, who might have comments on this. So I'd be interested to hear what their thoughts are.
Okay, I'm going to ask Robin first, though. Can I do that?
I don't have any comments. I would also, for now, it seems reasonable. Again, we talked about, we're still not exactly sure what format town meeting's going to be, but.
Yep. Okay, so Mr. Rapetti, Mr. Town Moderator.
No comments at this time. I think Chris did a good job covering the major points, and maybe Dave might have something he would like to add, but I'm speechless.
Okay.
I've never been used to that. So, Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question of Chris. If you could send us that list of Jim and myself, the warrant articles. If memory recalls, there were 26 before that, so there are now 30 articles on the warrant. So there has been a request to try and have this meeting in whatever form it takes, as Robin pointed out. Whatever that form is, speed is going to be of the essence. So 30 warrant articles, 2 hours. Call me crazy, but I don't know how the heck we're going to do that.
Well, I think, Dave, that when we sit down with the town meeting prep group, the number doesn't it raises an eyebrow, but it doesn't really, it depends on the complexity and the contentiousness of a particular article, more than the number of articles. A number of them are fairly, sort of housekeeping items. And I think, and some of them are, again, I wouldn't necessarily call them housekeeping articles, but implementing Department of Revenue recommendations around certain things. So I think that the time to really get into this and try, there's two things that have to happen. We need to really dig in and understand what's being requested and by whom. And then the other thing is we really need people to go out and sort of gauge community interest in various and sundry warrant articles, so that we have a sense of how we can bundle these and manage the number in order to hit a deadline that we want. Of course, we do want to minimize sort of the duration of the meeting. So I think that this is I think Chris's idea here is, here's what we have, guys. Here's what people are asking us to do. Some of these are just simply pass-throughs from last time. And it's up to that town meeting prep group, I think, to sort of to dig in once we have a much better understanding of this. Does that sound right?
I have no basis of commenting right or wrong. I just wanted to
No, in
make sure
terms of
that.
approach.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's fine with me. I'm looking at, you know me, you can tell from some of our emails, I try to be a realist, not a pessimist, but a realist. And we just want to make sure that we can deliver as everyone wants us to. And you know, the more articles, I mean, just literally having to go through, even if there was not one contentious vote, going through 30 articles is going to take 2 hours with all the prep and probably longer.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm. So just for me, my quick comment is pre-meeting communication, pre-meeting, pre-town meeting communication, transparency. Bob used the phrase gauging where the public stands on things. I echo that. I completely agree that that's going to be a big part of this. And then my final comment would be, if Jim Rapetti can single-handedly stop thunder and lightning from happening, it's that Jesuit connection. I think the Jesuit connection probably will work again. So I believe in Jim.
That was some trick he pulled last time. So, Robin? Any other comments?
No, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I think, yes, the number is a lot, but we need to go through it and figure out, you know, exactly what they are. And you know, maybe some of these, if they're purely housekeeping, we can do in a consent just to help save time, so that the ones that are newer that may have discussion, even though they're simple, you know, we can have more time to discuss those.
Yes, Jim.
Yeah, and one other point, following up on Robin and Dave's comments, we have great flexibility. There's always the option that we can have a truncated meeting before the beginning of the new fiscal year to deal with the items that we have to have in order to keep this town operating on a sound basis without having to go to the Department of Revenue for approval. And then hopefully, you know, the most pessimistic scenario is that things might not be better until September, but in September, if things are better, we can always have another meeting to consider the remainder of the items. So I think that, you know, the important thing now is to do exactly what you're doing, looking ahead, trying to figure out what the alternative scenarios are, and to plan accordingly. So I think you're right on track. We're right on track.
Thanks, Jim. At last night's warrant committee meeting, we had a brief discussion about the whole idea of vetting warrant requests, et cetera. And again, what John said is pretty much what I said last night. And you know, the effort this year in the continuing age of COVID is really going to come down to engagement and information flows to and from our residents. And we just simply have to focus on that. We have to get people to hold the forums, and we have to build awareness so people attend the forums. Last year, I believe the Board of Selectmen tried to hold a couple of information forums before the town meeting, but it was pretty late in the day. And my experience with doing this, based on the Carroll work in 2019 and the current work of the building committee that Ford's chairing, you really have to, it takes a little bit of time to build awareness. And once you start to build awareness, you tend to get a little bit more attendance at these meetings, and then you get a word of mouth effect. So starting early and sort of like voting, start early and vote often. You know, you have a much better shot at coming to a town meeting where people are informed and prepared as opposed to lost. And I think, you know, last night there was the cemetery bylaw change came up, and it was the first I heard of it. And Carol Jackman did a wonderful job. sort of explaining what this was all about and the rationale for it. But I mean, ordinarily, I think you just sort of, you'd scratch your head. And we talked about how you get that detailed information out to the audience. And I suggested at that time that with the building committee, we used an FAQ. So there are different mechanisms that we can employ to sort of engage and inform. And that's to me, that's the critical component. And it's going to be something that we're going to have to push. And next time we meet on the TMP, I think that'll be one of the topics that I would really like to sort of sink our teeth into. Anyway, anybody else? Okay, that was done. 1.2, Wilson's Way Neighborhood Association, the acceptance and vote. And Mr. Dwelly, you're still in the driver's seat. And you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, I clicked it. There we go. Looks like I'm off. The Wilson's Way Neighborhood Association donated a lot on Wilsondale Way to the town to be under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. So all the paperwork and the deeds have been taken care of by both parties' legal sides, and the Conservation Commission voted last week to accept the lot as town open space. So the votes this evening are now the final votes, and those final votes would be for the Board of Selectmen to accept the lots as open space for the town.
Thank you, Chris. John?
Thanks, Bob. We covered this in lots of detail at Open Space. The Board of Selectmen's been aware of this. Amy Moot has done a very good job just shepherding this process along, and through the efforts of Chris, I'm sure of Kate, and of the various boards. So this is something that's been in the works for quite a long time, and I can tell you the Open Space folks have been on top of it. They're very happy with the outcome, and believe that it was voted on in Lori's letter to Kate. I believe it was voted on Thursday of last week, or I'm sorry, Tuesday of last week.
Robin?
I don't have anything to add.
All right. So
No, other than to thank the neighborhood.
Right, another generous gift.
Right.
So yeah, that needs to be acknowledged as well. So thank you all very much. So I move to approve a deed of the property from the Wilson's Way Neighborhood Association, Inc., to the town of Dover, acting by and through its Conservation Commission, substantially in the form presented to the Board of Selectmen at its January 21st, 2021 meeting, with final changes to be made by the chair of the Conservation Commission with his reasonable discretion in consultation with town council.
I seconded John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
I move to authorize the chair of the Conservation Commission to take all actions on behalf of the Board of Selectmen that are reasonably necessary in the judgment of the chair to complete the acquisition of the property, including without limitation, signing deed acceptances, closing forms, affidavits, documents, and settlement statements.
Seconded John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Thank you all. Thank you, Neighborhood Association. Greatly appreciate your gift. Item, got to scroll down here, folks. 1.3, Families First Coronavirus Response Action. Ms. O'Brien, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before you, we have a memo recommending that the board extend the two main provisions of the Families Coronavirus Response Act that was signed into law March 18th, 2020 and expired December 31st, 2020. The two main provisions that are included here are the emergency paid sick leave and the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act. So a little bit about that. The emergency paid sick leave allows up to 80 hours of paid sick leave at employees' regular rate when they're unable to work due to being quarantined or waiting for some sort of medical diagnosis results. It also provides paid sick leave, same thing, at 2/3 employees' regular rate of pay if the employee is unable to work due to childcare issues related to COVID-19. And this is if their childcare provider closes down or they're unavailable because of COVID-19. So the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act provides care for, this would provide pay for employees whose childcare is closed, again, because of COVID-19. So due to the dedication of our staff throughout the pandemic, we are recommending that the board extend the FFCR leave until March 31st, 2021. And this would be retroactive to January 1st, 2021. So this would not provide any additional benefits or leave to anyone. It would just rather allow for an extension of the existing coverage, which could be critically important as we see, the Commonwealth at the highest rate of COVID-19 since the pandemic right now. Upon surveying other communities, about half have decided to extend these two provisions until March 31st, 2021. And just also want to note, we have partnered with the regional school for this policy. They passed an extension, the same extension earlier this week.
Thank you, Kate. John, any questions, comments?
Just three quick things, Bob, for Kate. Kate, I know that we've had people in the townhouse who have used family leave because of extenuating circumstances with dependents in their family. And I'd assume that this was designed to be able to specifically address people who are in the COVID, what, for the lack of a better term, you hear it in sports related things, in the COVID protocol, who would have to be out because they've been in contact. So my question to you would be just two quick questions. Is anyone currently using it in the COVID protocol, using family leave currently? And was anyone specifically using this? Has anybody specifically used this portion of it since it became enacted?
Sure. So we've had only one employee use it for childcare issues, and that's continuing. That's because the childcare provider closed down. And we've had, I think, 2 or 3 employees use it because they had to wait for a day or so for their COVID test to come back. Yeah.
My comment would be, for that reason alone, I think it would be a no-brainer that we should extend it and follow the suit. So thank you. That's it for me.
Thanks, John. Robin?
I agree with John.
I love it when she says that.
Is that the first one for 21?
Second one. Second time.
Wow. That's pretty good.
We're on a record.
I move to approve the extension of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act leave provisions as presented to March 31st, 2021.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Item 1.4, 2021 caucus update. Ms. Hoffman, or Mrs. Hoffman. Well, Felicia.
Hi there.
Hello.
So you have in front of you a memo tonight which gives you some broad strokes and a little bit of detail. Obviously, given the COVID situation, we don't want to put people at risk. So between the moderator, the assistant moderator, the town administrator, and myself, I think we've come up with a way that we can safely take care of nomination papers for all the open positions without any dangers. And I think it's a very efficient way. And it gives people plenty of time to come up with candidates for various positions.
So Felicia, could you just take a second? So this process, and I'd like you to describe it just briefly. This process will replace the caucus?
So what we would like to do is do nomination papers this year instead of the caucus, since
Okay.
caucus is in person and we know that's an issue. We talked also with town council because there are people with concerns about walking the papers. How do I get my papers signed? Normally we would go to the transfer station, and that's not always a comfortable thing these days and probably not advisable. So there are a couple of ways it can be done. A candidate can obviously take their own papers and walk around or get their neighbors and friends to sign them. Or we can keep them in the townhouse in the Great Hall, set up appointments for people who would wish to sign nomination papers for candidates. Every candidate has the opportunity to have their papers in the Great Hall, and we will take care to make sure that papers are signed. And that's one way to avoid a lot of concern about health issues for this.
Okay, and how many elected positions are open right now?
I believe there are 12.
12. So 12 people either running for office or re-running for office.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Jim or Dave, you want to add anything? Got a couple of nods. Got a couple. Jim, yeah, no, nods?
No, I think Felicia and Chris and Dave have come up with a great system to deal with this situation, and I was really pleased that they were so creative, and I think this will work. So I want to thank them, particularly Felicia, Dave, and Chris for brainstorming and putting this together. Thank you.
John, any questions or comments?
Thanks, Bob. I agree with Jim. I think this will work, and I think it's a very creative way of doing it. I also would just like to ask Jim or Dave, have you experienced or has anybody tried this where on a call like this, where you've got citizens and the citizens, you can verify the citizens live at a specific address? Could this type of format be used where if we had a citizen during citizen speak on any of these types of calls, say, I'd like to nominate Dave Haviland for assistant moderator, or I'd like to nominate Felicia Hoffman for town clerk?
I'll answer that, and then Chris and Dave should feel free to jump in. We've been advised that we can't have the caucus electronically. It would have to be held in person. And I think that by extension, that would mean that we can't, and the signatures have to be real ink signatures, so that we've also been advised that somebody emailing in saying, I want to sign John Jeffrey's nomination paper, that's not going to suffice. It has to be an ink signature. So unfortunately, Chris, even though I wish we could do something like that, it doesn't seem to be available.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think the only thing I would add to that is in the spirit of Dover, our community, and overcoming COVID, the same people who tend to go to caucus, and if we can just encourage them all to go down and sign the papers and just make this an easy process. And I mean, I plan on just whoever's papers are there, I'm going to sign them, and I'm going to bring Kate and Theo and get this done, because this is less to do with quote politics end quote, but rather following a legal process and overcoming COVID. And as a community, I think this will get it done, and that way we still follow the legal process and move about our lives.
Thank you, Dave. Robin?
So I agree. It seems like a cumbersome process, but again, the government hasn't been able to adapt to anything other than the status quo. So I commend Felicia and the rest of the team for coming up with this process. It's different. It sounds a little bit inconvenient, but it also sounds really safe, and it sounds like it's going to work. And I agree with Dave Havlin. If you go down there, you should go down and sign all of the nomination papers of each of the candidates. But I think it's really important to get the word out. And again, it's the same old question. How do you get the word out to all the different people so that everybody knows that this is going on?
Thank you, Robin. And that was going to be my closing question. So now I have to come up with a new closing question.
Right. But I think it's really creative way, and given the circumstances, actually an efficient way, given the circumstances.
So I'm going to assume, Felicia, that you and Kate have sort of thought about that. Is that true or not true? Are you planning to think about that?
So, yeah, we're going to get something out in the papers. We're going to be sending something to all the board chairs. We're going to ask people to put it out on their email list that we know lots of people have. We're going to get it on the website. We'll get it out there. We'll get it publicized. And we're going to ask any candidate, please, to put it out there too. If you want to be a serious candidate, let people know that you do want to, and ask people to come and help us with this. And I think it'll work fine.
Thank you. And I'm assuming social media?
Absolutely.
Well, that seems like the normal route we take these days. So, okay. Any other questions? It's a plan. It's practical. It'll get us where we need to be. We just need to make sure people know and show up and sign those papers.
We need what, Felicia, 32, 33 people?
32.
We need 32, and I'm gonna encourage everybody to go for at least 35 or so, just to make sure everything's workable. The last thing we want is somebody not to get it because of one signature.
So as this process goes on, Felicia, will you keep the people running for office, we keep them apprised of the situation?
That's a little bit sticky, but certainly anybody can ask me as a candidate, how am I doing? But I'm also going to encourage the candidates to take a set of papers too, because we can combine the two sets of papers. More is always better than less.
Okay. So last time around, everybody good? John?
Yes.
Robin? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll get that one going. Board of Selectmen updates. Board members will provide updates, if any, on ongoing projects. John?
I gave pretty much the update with regards to Wilson Way. That was the focus of our open space meeting, our last open space meeting.
Robin? Maybe you'd want to talk about water a little bit, Robin, to satisfy Justine's question.
Bob, I have a couple of updates.
Okay.
So first of all, I did participate in the water committee meeting, which was a week ago, I guess. It was a really effective meeting. The board members presented all of the work that they have done with respect to communication. How do you communicate to citizens that water is a very valuable commodity, that we need to conserve water, especially in times of drought? How do you get information out there? What have other towns done? And they've done a lot of work, and they have a very ambitious priority list. So I asked them to come to one of our next meetings to coordinate with Kate and Chris and to present what they have done and what other towns have done, and then also to prioritize this ambitious list, because I'm not sure we can get everything done in 1 year, but everything that is on their list to me makes a lot of sense. And I also believe that if we take smaller steps, we're going to get a lot more buy-in, and we're going to get, citizens of Dover actually thinking about water conservation. And, it's not just the town doing it. One of the suggestions they had is working in parallel with Colonial as well about these conservation measures, because, we really do need to be thinking about conserving water and cutting consumption. So I was really blown away by all the work they've done. And, they were smart. They leveraged what other towns have done. So we know what's been successful in other towns. It's just too ambitious to try and do everything in the next 3 months, because really you have to hit the ground running in March to begin to get the information out there. And the things we talked about was maybe putting some flyers in tax bills. Maybe citizens will open that as, again, it was the same issue. How do you reach everybody? How do you communicate? But, they have really done some great work.
On the border initiative, Robin, sort of strategic initiative?
Right. So, it's been very difficult to get members. With COVID, it's been really hard to get people to commit to something long term. So my suggestion would be, I do have 2 or 3 really good people that are willing to do some work. So what I would suggest we do is that we start the committee with fewer people, because, really the goal is to work with a consultant to help us map things out. So with, the concurrence of you and John, that's what I'd like to do, is work with the town administrator and the 2 individuals that are willing to commit some time to really map out what we need to do, and maybe put together an RFP to get a consultant to work with us.
John?
I agree with that. I agree. I agree with Robin, and we have 2 people that Robin and I have both spoken with regards to people who have an interest in this, and I think that's a very, very good idea. I just have one other thing that I would like to add, Bob, and I know that you're going to talk about it, but I want to let's finish with this first, and then, if you will, I'd just like to come back to it with regards to the combination of the Board of Health Dover meeting and the Sherburne Board of Health meeting that I attended last week. So just we can, if you don't mind, come back to that before, and I know you're going to speak on some of the Board of Health items in your comments.
Okay, thanks, John. So Robin, I was asked by, I guess it was a member of the Warren Committee, about the 2 water, what's the difference between the Water Resources Committee and the Water Resources Task Force? And I'm wondering if are we going to combine? Are we going to leverage? How's that? Are we going to put one under the other so that?
Well, we definitely, that's something that this committee should think about. As I've said all along, what the Water Resource Committee has done has been, they've really laid a fantastic foundation. The monitoring wells, I believe what's going to happen is the town's going to continue to collect data on those wells. I was asked the question if maybe we could also talk to Colonial and have them give us data on some of their wells as well. So we will reach out to them and see if they will share that. Because again, keep in mind, the reason this committee was founded was to put those wells in place so that we could quantify what the baseline is and continue to monitor it. So not continuing to monitor those wells is not the right thing. And, it's something that the town can do, and we can do it, monthly, and we can post it. or so that, because we have to keep track of it. It's the
Yep.
only quantitative information that we have. You know, listening to all the work that the committee has done on education, that's another piece of water. You know, it's the strategic piece of water. You know, unfortunately, we need to look at what our water supply is. We need to think about what happens if that water supply is no longer there. What are our choices? And then, you know, the question also is that you need to answer what is development going to do to that water supply, and how much development can the town really support given the water supply that we have. And then there's this low-hanging fruit, which is conservation matters. You know, everybody in Dover needs to understand that we're all drawing water from the same aquifer, whether you're on Colonial or whether you have your own well. And that is our only source of water right now. And we shouldn't have our heads stuck in the sand thinking the water tables are never going to go down. So we really need to begin to think about conservation. And that's why I would love for the committee to come and present some of the work that they've done, because both of these things have to happen simultaneously. And you know, maybe it does make sense to combine the two committees and have the one be like the education arm, and the other one, you know, working with consultants looking at you know, what we have as a water source. We know there's one water source, and you know, we're monitoring it. But what happens if you start to see a dramatic decline? I mean, what are your options? We need to know that. So
Yes. So thank you. That was a terrific overview. It was a much simpler question. It was as a practitioner of management, if we're setting up a task force to execute both sort of tactical and strategic work, I'd like to have someone accountable. And so it's just easier if it's you, Robin, or it's Justine, or it's John, rather than split between a couple of 2 or 3 people.
Right. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, we will continue to talk, but what we wanted to make sure was that we didn't miss out on the successes, the small successes that this committee's already had. So, you know, and continue to have. So, you know, certainly it's worth conversation with the committee, and it probably does make sense to combine the two.
Okay. I mean, clearly leveraging their work is mandatory. I mean, it provides the baseline. So yes.
And continuing the work is the most important thing. So
yes.
I think Justine wanted to say something.
Yeah, I saw her wave a couple times, but you know, with Justine, you never really know. I'll see. Justine, you're on mute. Still on mute, Justine.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, thank you. Yeah, we have put in a lot of work, and I think you guys appreciate it. And I think I'm speaking for myself, by the way. As I think some of you know, and Robin has been attending some of our water study committee meetings, which are under the aegis of the Board of Health. And the next one is actually on my birthday, I might add, on January 27th at 8 o'clock in the morning. I think, you know, from my point of view, and I think John Jeffries also and I are on the Open Space Committee together, I think it's both the supply issue. I've said this over and over, and you're probably sick and tired of me hearing this, but it's both the supply issue, which has to do with a commercial water company primarily, not exclusively, in Dover, which is, from my point of view, speaking as an individual, virtually no incentive to conserve water. The more that people draw on the water, the more money they make. Okay. But on the other hand, it also has to do, as we've talked about, and I think my friend Carol Lisbon agrees with me, a demand issue. And that's where the whole issue about conservation, especially vis-a-vis lawn irrigation systems, which is, by the way, as I think you three acknowledge, is the primary source of the water problems in Dover.
In the summer months.
In the summer months. Now, having said that, throughout the whole year, colonial water specifically exceeds their scientifically determined water withdrawal limits. It's especially bad in the summer, okay? But the whole year, there are these, I feel like Dr. Fauci. I mean, there are these scientific limits that were set by Mass DEP a number of years ago that Colonial has continued to ignore. And as you guys know, I'm optimistic that you are negotiating toughly with Colonial pertaining to their mandate, also under requirement, I should say, under their water permit from the Mass DEP, that they encourage their consumers to conserve, which has been, in my opinion, minimal over these many, many years. So I think it's both, okay? Now, vis-a-vis what you just said about, Robin, you just said about merging our two, or getting the benefit of our two organizations. Certainly we have one person, certainly I know Ron Myrick, that you're all familiar with on our board, who on the Water Committee Resource Board Committee under the Board of Health. That is a more professional in the field. And certainly I defer to Ron regarding specific issues. But I will say for me as a novice, but an environmentalist and a person like 2/3 of Dover on a private well who had to re-drill my well because of the climate change issues in Massachusetts, i.e. these periods of drought. I think you guys all, hopefully we all agree on a baseline here, that there are going to be continued periods of drought followed by tremendous, huge amounts of rainfall, essentially. And so we have to adjust both from our water use point of view, as well as from our acknowledgement about, for instance, trees. I just had, if I may digress just for a minute, a man, an arborist, come out to our house today, and I sort of knew this, but he confirmed it, that with this yin yang of droughts, like in 2016 and 2020, what happens, especially to white pines, which is the one I'm dealing with at the moment, during periods of drought, their root systems contract, right? And then when we get these bizarre, from at least historically, from periods of excessive rainfalls, coupled with these historically bizarre windstorms that we're all having, you have huge trees like these 120 feet, at least in my house, pines falling entirely over. The roots have shrunk during the drought. And when you've got the rain and the windstorms, and they're all already shallow rooted trees, you have them falling over. Entire systems, not just half the tree, the whole thing. So you got 110 feet, 120 feet. So what does this have to do with water? It has to do with the fact that you need to saturate the root systems of your trees. That means in order to hold water, both from a flooding point of view and also from a pumping point of view for the human being that relies on the water You don't overpump. And I don't know how I can get this out to people more forcefully, but I think you guys are beginning to realize, and maybe you already know this, and I'm preaching to the choir, that we have to have two forms. We have to have regulation from the state, and that means Mass DEP cranking down on Kelowna Water, specifically because they're the major public water supplier in Dover, and alternatively, those of us like me with 3 acres, more, I have maybe 1.5 acres of lawn and 1.5 acres of forest. But okay, Bob, okay, I'll get over it. But you hear what I'm saying. It's both, okay? So I'm sure our next water committee meeting is on next Wednesday, January 27th. I'm sure Robin, if you can come, great. If not, I'm sure we'll all update you, okay? But thank you, and we'll stay in touch, okay?
Thanks, Justine.
Yep.
John, I'm going to come back to you.
Okay, because Bob, I have one more update.
All right, sorry. John,
So,
I'm not coming back to you. I'm going back to Robin.
right, so I had put together, based upon input from the Warrant Committee and a subsection of the Warrant Committee, a presentation on the Capital Stabilization Fund. So I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to look at it, so perhaps you could give your feedback to Chris so that I could then incorporate those changes into the presentation, because we really want to start communicating, why we want the fund, what it's going to do.
Yeah, I've sent my comments to Chris.
Okay, great.
So he said he was just going to wait to get I guess, John's and then sort of the puddle.
Okay, perfect.
John?
So thanks, Bob. Just real briefly regarding the combined Board of Health, Dover, Board of Health, Sherburne meeting last week, attended that. Just wanted to report back to you that there are several issues that the Board of Health, Dover, Board of Health, Sherburne are trying to work jointly on with regards to the COVID vaccination and COVID vaccination distribution. So there are, as you can imagine, and this is not news to anyone, there are a number of logistical issues that our very small towns and our population, most importantly, our at-risk population, have to deal with. So that most of the conversation was centered around distribution, accessibility. How do they continue to identify their most at-risk people and the people who would be in need of the vaccine as soon as it is available. So that was number one. Number two, as sort of an additional unit of conversation, there was a lot of discussion with regards to Sherburne and Sherburne's the townhouse in Sherburne, and how members of the townhouse in Sherburne are not at all happy with the conditions inside the townhouse. Juxtapose that to the townhouse in Dover, where I would say we have done a very, very good job maintaining the workflow, workspace, accessibility, and an overall environment of all of our employees who are housed inside the townhouse. So that was a topic of conversation that went on for quite a bit. I don't think there's any need to go any further into it, but I just wanted to make everyone aware that it is something that not only with COVID and the continuation of what our workspace and work environment will be like as COVID continues, as we continue to address this, we are not leaving that conversation in a vacuum. That conversation is important to the selectmen as it is important to all of our employees, regardless of how they're impacted by the virus. So both the beginning of the vaccination process and the ongoing continuation of keeping all of our employees safe and keeping the environment in the best particular situation we could be. That's it.
Thanks, John. The COVID task force meets tomorrow at 10. What I do know, and that particular one of the, vaccination distribution is in vaccinating people is one of the top topics of that group. I had the first responders have been vaccinated. That process went well. I checked in with Tim Sturgeon, our emergency management person, and he was very pleased with how that all went. So for us, sort of phase 1A seemed to go incredibly well. And I'm waiting to hear. And tomorrow, as we meet, we'll begin to hopefully I'll get updated on what's the next phase and who's involved. So so we can leverage the planning and execution that we've already done, sort of a pilot with first responders. It is absolutely clear that the logistical elements of dealing with the vaccine are quite extreme. And our strategy from the get-go has been to leverage larger towns who have the capability to store and keep the vaccinations in the proper temperature. So that means that as we go through the process, many people will have to go like they did to Westwood to get the vaccination. And again, it went very, very well. Our concern are being the COVID task force. The concern has always been for those most at risk and those who are at home, who don't have the capability of driving or who may not want to leave the house. And how do we get the vaccine to them? How do we get them to the vaccine? And Janet Claypool at the COA has a pretty good list. And I think that, again, starting tomorrow, as we understand, or as I understand, as the group understands what the tiering is and the priority order for people, that'll be high up on the list as well. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. I think the first foray into the vaccination process went very well. We have really good people working on this, and I have every confidence that we will get the vaccine to the people. We will pour the people to the vaccine, and that will do it in an efficient and mostly important, effective, and safe way. So thanks. There's an awful lot of focus on this, not just in Dover and Sherburne, but many parts of the country. So we'll keep you informed. I have a question for the board. At a couple of, this goes back to information forums. I wrote a note to the boards and committees about having public forums for warrant articles. And I think I got a question from Gordon and or Rob Andrews about what do we do about the operating budget, staff increases in the operating budget, changes in the operating budget. And I was reminded that, I mentioned it earlier, that last year we, the board, had some information forums to go over the operating budget and probably capital as a way to see what we might fare at the town meeting. In talking, and I've talked with Gordon and I've talked with Chris a little bit at our weekly meeting or bi-weekly meeting, and it occurred to me that it might make some sense for Chris and Gordon and maybe Barry to hold an information forum and give a high-level overview of Article 4, if that's the operating budget, and Article 5, if that's the capital budget. And there are some hurdles to that because, if you did it early, if you wanted to do it in February, for example, there would be a series of unknowns, including the fact that the warrant committee, wouldn't actually have a vote on this. So I'm always sort of leaning toward more information, properly annotated is better. And I'm just wondering if you guys, if John, you or Rob, if you have a point of view on how we as a board, either in conjunction with the warrant committee and the capital budget committee or alone, as we did last year, do some information forums on town meeting, and in particular, the operating budget and the capital budget. John, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Bob. I agree with the sentiment of more concise, and as concisely presented a transparent operating budget we can get is going to be well received. And the constraints that we've talked about tonight, the constraints that we've talked about last year, are really haven't changed. Dave and Jim said it again this evening. So we have to work within those confines. And I think that the idea of joint presentations are very effective. And I think that we're going to have to do as much as we can do, because what we learned last year is we still have to bring the message to people in a way that they're going to accept it. So I know that's our challenge, and whatever we can do to get people to focus on these are the building blocks and the foundations of what the town must have to run on is what we're charged to do.
Thank you, John. Robert?
Again, it's the same old. How do you get people to focus on it? So, maybe it does make sense to start early and just start having forums or meetings where once we get a sense of what the budget is, and put the same presentations on the website, and let people know that the information is on the website, and also just continue to hold these forums. Maybe we have something, I'm just thinking out loud, maybe starting in March when the budget has settled, we just say every other week there's going to be just a preview of town meeting for those that want to attend.
Yeah, I really like the way that Chris did those presentations with us last time.
Right.
It was sort of a higher level, focusing on differences here, the change here, change there, and where we didn't have the information or it was not fully settled. He said that, look, I don't have this, or this has to come from the region. So I'm personally less convinced that we have to have impeccable numbers, and more interested in getting feedback. We talked last night at the warrant committee meeting, and putting stuff on the website is passive. And it means that somebody has to know it's out there. They will have to access the website. They have the interest, time, et cetera, but we won't get feedback. The forum is interactive, and to me, again, I would prefer the interactive. All of it needs to be done, but we're only going to get feedback in an interactive session. And so again, this is.
Well, Bob, you only get feedback if people attend. That's true.
True.
Right.
And
so
building
that's why you have to do.
I talked about. Sorry, Robin. Building audience is hard. Go ahead.
But that's why you have to do both. I mean, some people want to get their information passively, so it just has to be made available. And maybe on social media, you say, the budget's available. There are also these forums. Please attend, and you see how many people attend.
What we do know, I agree with you both. What we do know is that people will attend. They do attend when it immediately impacts them. So we had phenomenal attendance during the water issue, right? We had great attendance when there is a topic of debate, a topic of concern, a topic of that's going to immediately impact a neighborhood or a group. Then we're going to have very good participation. We're going to have a lot of debate, where as a town, we're very good at that. And then what happens is if it's a sense of it doesn't impact me immediately, it's hard to get people to attend. So it's a challenge. It's always going to be the same challenge.
No, I agree.
Gordon, do you have a comment?
I do. Thanks. I was just muting my other computer. So I'm not sure that we need to discuss it here now or anything, but I did have some other thoughts as I was after our meeting last night, which, you know, there is the issue of it being passive, and the fact, you know, as you know, a couple of us have brought up at times, you know, we already have open hearing. I mean, is this just doing more open hearings? And I was thinking about it, and it's, you know, as John was just saying, people, you know, you have to really, it has to be something that people find really compelling, usually, for them to sign on. You know, are my kids going to get back to school? You know, are we going to have a 40B in the center of town? And so you know, one thing I was thinking about that could be helpful is to try and figure out a way to sort of drive home the point. You know, how much are your taxes going to go up next year? Information session. So something like that, you know, where people would, I think there may be a way to, and you know, we have to be careful about it. And I'm just using that sort of as a throwaway example, but a way to generate interest, you know, because I think if we just try to do the same thing and push it out, you know, on the website, push it out in Dover One News, we're probably going to get the same response we get at open hearing. So that was my thinking, and you know, it's more common and sort of, you know, is there some way we can think creatively about how we can drive people to these events?
Yeah, you really have to build an audience. That's absolutely right, Jim. I mean, this sort of fits with the town meeting prep stuff and your idea about, you know, having fitting proposals.
Yeah, you know, I think that in the case of the warrant articles that pertain to specific committees, that the committees probably know who their constituents are, and they should be able to contact them about having a Zoom session where they solicit their views. I think that the harder question that you're wrestling with is what to do with the budget, because that has such a broad scope that it doesn't necessarily have a significant focused or direct impact on a particular constituency. And you know, this sounds very trite, but I was wondering whether we should start to, if you start to have information sessions about the budget, maybe hang a banner in the town common, also put up the electronic sign that the police chief has. I don't know how many people read the local newspapers anymore, but also put notices in there, and in the various Facebook groups and other groups. Does Dover have a Twitter account too? Or I know, so maybe use social media, publicize the Zoom session as much as possible, where you will be discussing the budget. Beyond that, I'm afraid my imagination is not very creative tonight.
You're getting too tired, Jim? It's getting late in the day here, huh? So I will come back and say, Ruth Townsend, who does a lot of the audience building for the Carroll Project, uses those techniques, and they've been reasonably, you know, effective. So the point is, you really need, and Gordon's absolutely right, you need to build awareness, and there needs to be interest. Whether we say the taxes are going up, you know, well, there needs to be a hook to come in and attend the meeting. But the nice thing is, this is way easier to attend than go into townhouse, and you can't do that anyway. So I don't know. As the next step, Gordon, would you like to talk with Chris and see if you can pull something together, or Chris willing to work with Gordon to see if you can iron out some of this stuff? I'll get right to you, Dave.
So I think that makes, I mean, one thing I would say is I think that, so there's two different things here. So there's the sort of, I'll call it special articles, or the sort of major changes, and those I think should be run by the committees that are proposing them.
Yep.
As far as the operating budget, I think that it makes sense for us to start planning for it now, but for some of the reasons that Robin mentioned, and as we discussed sort of at length last night, number one, the committee is very sort of, we're pretty overextended right now. Just because it's the busy season, we're meeting every Wednesday. Most of us have liaison meetings at least once or twice a week outside of that. And we have, I guess more importantly, we haven't figured out our recommendations. There's some articles that might, or some things that might end up being withdrawn, or that we might recommend against. There's so much uncertainty now. It would be, I think planning now makes sense, but I think it would be very difficult to get started, very much in advance of really open hearings. We don't vote on anything until after open hearing because we have to allow the citizens to speak.
Yeah.
So that's the other concern that we were talking about last night, as far as trying to get going now from the operational budget standpoint. We don't want to go out there and talk about things that might be withdrawn or that we might recommend again. It's just there's uncertainty, and that's a challenge, especially if people are there and they start asking questions along those lines. Why are you recommending this? And we haven't recommended anything. Things are in flux.
Yeah.
So
Chris shares a lot of that concern, by the way.
What's that?
Chris shares a lot of that concern. So it's that. So we're aware of it. We're aware of it. Okay, Dave.
Yes, sorry, this is a little bit delayed here, but I don't know, when do the next tax bills go out? Because if it's possible to put a quick flyer in there explaining the changes, what we're going to ask citizens to do and to notify, it's just a quick little reminder, given the unusual circumstances. But the one thing that people will definitely open is their tax bills. So if you want to reach everyone, that's perhaps one way to do it.
I think I have mine already.
I'm talking about the next one. I don't know
February
the timing
1st,
for the next
Dave.
one. The timing for the next one.
Jim?
I think that's a great idea. And particularly if you're calling attention to the fact that you're going to be considering the town budget at the same time that you're receiving a tax bill, that might be some interest.
Ouch. Justine?
Well, I used to get newspapers. I don't get them anymore. I have about 400 people's emails, and I'm sure other people are from Dover residents, and I'm sure other people have similar email things. I only once a year, I think you guys know this, send out an email to Dover residents saying, please show up at town meeting, okay? And my younger friends do Nextdoor, right? And they do Facebook. And then a few people that I know look at the town website. So all I'm saying is, and to her credit, Ruth Townsend has about 6 or 7 of us who she emails to try to get us to send out info pertaining to Carroll School. Now, in my case, I don't do it all the time because I think people don't want to hear from me except once or twice a year. You know what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is I think you leverage all those email lists, private email lists, Nextdoor, Facebook, and the town website. And beyond that, the voters get what they get.
Okay, thank you. So, John, do you have any? I'm going to draw this to a close. John, anything?
Only thing I would remind is, since town meetings have been in existence, the operating budget is the shortest segment of town meeting. Jim passes the operating budget.
But it takes a long time to read, John.
It takes 18 minutes to spend $38 million, and it takes another 3 hours to debate all the things like plastic bags, rail trails, leash laws, dogs, cats, horses, you name it.
Jim promised me it's going to be different this year. Robin?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for that elongated discussion. I know I'm running over. Apologize, but I do have one other thing to update the committee on. Just on Carroll, the architects are refining facility options. There are two options for new facilities. One is a sort of a single floor layout, and the other is a two-story design. And the new options are sort of laid out east-west on Springdale, so face across from the townhouse. And then there are two renovate. And I'm not 100% sure I have my notes right here, but let's take this as close enough. There's an option that they're looking at that retain the 1910 and 1930 test buildings and work within that framework with sort of modest additions or modest adds, particularly around where the older buildings meet the 1971 extension. So there may be a different entranceway there. And then they have one where they keep the 1910 building and then add new construction behind it in order to provide space to accommodate the programs for the town. So the renovate buildings are essentially run, I guess it's north-south on the property in the location where they are now, and the new they have laid out as east-west. And on the east-west, in both layouts, there's reasonable open space behind the buildings for outdoor activities. So that's where they sit now. The next meeting is on Monday. Oh, and there's one other thing. Everybody is aware that the property on Springdale next to the law office for Jack has been sold, and I'm just wondering, asking the board if there's any interest in pursuing that property as a town to get control more of the space in town center. You don't have to answer now. I just wanted to raise it. You could think about it, and we could take it up at some other point in time. Unless you have comments now, John.
Bob, can I just clarify? Do you mean the building that Jack
Yes.
that Jack occupied and the building behind it?
No, just the one site. Jack's law office.
Yeah.
Robert?
I don't have any comments.
Okay, so that is it for me. And any comments on the upcoming agenda items, February 11th to February 25th?
None for me.
Do we have the water presentation on there anywhere?
If I may, Chairman, so we're having a water committee meeting on January 27th. And I think, Robin, you may or may not be able to come, but I know you're in charge of that. And we're going to be talking about various matters then, including a time if we want to go before you guys pertaining to various matters. Okay.
Okay. So you'll get that to Chris then, Justine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Dwelly, Town Administrator updates.
Just want to remind everyone that Denise Garlick's got her State of the Community scheduled for this coming Tuesday evening. So it's out there on the web, social media. I hope everyone can join. That's all I have this evening.
Boy, you're really saving us time now. Consent agenda. Item C1. Summary approve open session meeting minutes for September 24th, October 8th, and October 22nd. November 5th, November 19th, December 3rd, and December 17th, 2020. Somebody's been busy doing minutes, let me tell you. I'm not sure who that is exactly, but it might be.
Thank you.
So,
thank you, Mona.
I move to, before I do that, any comments or questions? John?
Thank you, Mona.
Robin?
You're welcome.
That was very good, Robin. Did you do that with short list?
More to come.
Robin, anything?
No, just thank you to Mona. I was thinking the same thing when I saw all those minutes come through.
Yeah. So I sent her a note when I was reviewing the minutes, and I said, I had to take a nap after reviewing the minutes. She said, you had to take a nap. I had to take a day off after I wrote the minutes.
Shh.
Okay, so all kidding aside, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, I, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Okay, so assuming that that's all the business in front of the Board of Selectmen for tonight, 21-21-21, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor, I, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
As thank you all for participating, and very appreciative of your insights and thoughts. This is a team effort, as I've said many times, getting through COVID and all the rest of that stuff. Greatly appreciate your help. Thank you. Have a good time. Good night. Good weekend.
Happy birthday, Justine.
Happy birthday, Justine.
It's the 27th.
I know.
I think she's
We're good.
expecting donuts at the meeting or something.
Good night, all.
Good night.